All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain.
You're crying in the rain, Pally.
Guess who's waking up over here?
Time to cash out.
Will you get it over with?
Maybe cons kill people without looking them in the face. But I ain't a fink. Dig? You've made your last delivery, kid. Sorry you got twisted up in this scene. From where you're kneeling must seem like an 18-carat run of bad luck. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
These are toxic people, and they just love pointing out flaws, and they don't provide any positive criticism. They don't point out the positives. They're just negative people, constantly toxic. Those kind of people exist, and you'll never cure those people. You can't do anything to convince those people. You must simply do what you can to block them out of your lives.
I want him dead because he cramps my business.
I survived because the fire inside of me is a light shining in the darkness, and the darkness could not comprehend it. I also survived because...
Oh, you can't keep a good dog down.
No, sir.
No, you can't keep a good dog down. I've seen pain and hurt.
That's right.
I've eaten dirt.
That's true.
It's hard to buy, but even I've been jilted by a skirt.
He lied.
Look, pal, I'm still around. 'Cause you can't keep a good dog down.
You can't keep a good dog down.
No, you can't.
No, you can't keep a good dog down.
So, my story with Oxhorn begins sometime in the latter half of 2017. I see this pretentious fedora-wearing neckbeard dressed up like a homeless person. And my first thought was...
What's wrong with this dude?
Yes, that's exactly right, Maddie. I was thinking, what the fuck is wrong with this clown? Is he some sort of hobo cosplayer or something? Is he part of some strange religious sect or cult? Or does he have some sort of mental illness that makes him think that dressing up like this is an acceptable thing to do? Those were my first thoughts on this guy. But as they say, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover and all that. So I gave him a chance, nevertheless. Then I came to his In Defense of Fallout 4 video, and I thought, holy shit, this guy is a toxic Bethesda shill. There's a lot of bullshit he says in that video, but I let it slide. I thought, oh well, he likes a garbage game. I'll just ignore his Fallout 4 videos and watch the ones for the real Fallout games. That's when I noticed he had no videos whatsoever for the original Fallouts. At that time, he said he read all the comments, so I told him he should make original Fallout videos. In response, he made 2 token ones, and those were all he made for a very long time. But I watched some of his New Vegas videos. Now, at this time, I still didn't hate the guy. I knew he was a Bugthestard shill, but I thought, well, at least he likes New Vegas too, so I can live with it. But then I watched his video on the Sunset Sarsaparilla and all the lies he said in that video. Now, I'm the kind of person that almost never leaves dislikes on a video. In fact, if I'm subscribed to someone, I generally give a like before I've even watched it. That's what I did here, but then he started lying and slandering Obsidian, saying they fucked up the lore, and this and that. And that bullshit with the BOS sticker, which was due to a mod he installed himself. Well, that made me turn the like on the video into a dislike, needless to say. And I left a comment where I told him, I said, dude, what you're saying here is wrong. You need to fix this shit. But instead of fixing his mistakes, he just said, wow, just wow. And to this day, he still hasn't fixed his mistakes. And people watch his videos thinking he knows what he's talking about, but he doesn't know shit. You'll never see this comment, by the way, because he shadow banned me from his channel, which also hid all of my comments from everyone except myself. But I did manage to take this screenshot as proof of it. And as you can see, I get a lot more likes on that comment than he did on his wow, just wow response. Even though he had a home field advantage, I still owned him. People even came to my defense. Like this comment from Captain Snurch. People recognized Oxhorn was in the wrong and was being a bully, so they stood up for me, and I appreciate that. So thank you if any of you should happen to see this video. But like I said, Oxhorn didn't like the fact that people were siding against him, especially on his own channel, so he shadow banned me, and all of my comments were hidden from everyone but myself. That's how the shadow banning works. I explained all this in my previous video, and that was what prompted me to make that video. If Oxhorn hadn't banned me like he did, and if he would have fixed his mistakes like I politely asked, then I never would have made that video. But he took the way of a coward and a bully. So that left me no other choice. I had to make that video to get the truth out there. Now that video was up for like 4 days, and it had a ton of views. Even though it was only up for a short time, it was the most viewed video on my channel. It seemed like there was actually some hope that there would be some justice after all. But then I got this message from YouTube. Ironically, even though I was standing up to a bully, I was the one being accused of being a bully. Even though Oxhorn had hundreds of thousands of subscribers and my channel only had a tiny fraction as many, I was somehow able to bully him, or so they say. But how is that even possible? But you know how it is with YouTube these days. They take the side of large channels against the small ones, regardless of the facts. YouTube only cares about making money, so they side with the large channels because it's the large channels which make them the money. Small channels are disposable. They'll kill them off on a whim and won't even give any explanation. They never gave any explanation what was wrong with my video. They just shut it down with no explanation ever given. And since I knew I was in the right, of course I appealed it. But that proved to be an exercise in futility. Thankfully, a YouTuber by the name of Sean Connery managed to save the video before it had been deleted. And he uploaded it to a site called Mediafire, so fortunately not all was lost. And because of him, others have been able to re-upload the video on other channels. So Oxhorn's attempt to silence the truth has failed. And now that genie is out of the bottle, and it can never be put back in, no matter what he does. In that very same video, I had said that he can't silence the truth. And it turns out I was right. The fact that he has tried so hard to silence this truth proves that he is a bully and a tyrant. And he will not get away with his crimes forever. More and more people are starting to see him for the fraud and the hack that he truly is. Oxhorn's support for Fallout 76 is the most recent example of how there is literally nothing that is beneath him. This comes as no surprise to me. I knew exactly what he was as soon as the Paid Mods Club, aka the Creation Club, came out, because he was shilling for that. There's nothing that is beneath this guy. He would probably throw his own mother under a bus just so the bus wouldn't run over a dime that he is trying to pick up. Nothing matters more to this guy than the almighty dollar. But more on that later. Anyway, like I said, I appealed my video being taken down, but it was rejected. And also, I received a strike. This, of course, was wrong, but I couldn't do anything about it. YouTube says that if you get 3 strikes, they terminate your account. But this turned out to be a lie, because eventually they terminated my account even though I only had this 1 strike. I never received a 2nd or 3rd strike at any time. But for some reason, I was just spontaneously banned, and they didn't give any explanation for it. Anyone who is subscribed to my channel will back me up when I say that the only videos I made after that first strike were innocuous Let's Play videos. I was playing New Vegas as a Dale Gribble character, and that was all that I did from that point up until my channel was terminated for no reason at all. Ask anyone that was subscribed to my channel, and I'm sure they will confirm what I'm saying is true. I never made any video that was, quote, bullying, end quote, Oxhorn. I never once mentioned his name at all in any of those Let's Play videos. So I don't know where this bullying accusation comes from. Now, if you think my first video was me bullying him, okay, whatever. I don't agree, but if you insist, then whatever, so be it. But that accounts for the first strike. But I never did anything at all to get a 2nd or 3rd strike. So how do you get banned if you only had 1 strike and then you never did? It doesn't make any sense. It sounds like double jeopardy to me. Double jeopardy is where someone is punished for a crime and then they're punished again for the same crime even though they've already been punished for it. But anyway, I made a Twitter account for the purpose of my channel, and as you can see, these were the videos I made up until the day when my account was terminated for no reason at all. I could not even log into my terminated account in order to appeal it, so I had to turn to email. And this was the response I received. It's funny how they call it suspension. I always thought of suspension as being something temporary. Why not just call it a termination if that's what it is? Now, I've tried a number of times to get an explanation from YouTube of why I was terminated, but I couldn't get a straight answer out of them, which leads me to conclude that there was no reason. If there was a reason, they could have explained it, right? Trying to get a straight answer out of YouTube is a lot like this.
I hope this has been enlightening for you. But I must thank you, come again. But thank you, come again.
But what I find interesting here is that they say that it was Oxhorn who filed complaints against me. So they would tell me that, but they couldn't tell me what my rule violations were? That seems very suspicious to me. It seems like he just wanted to shut my channel down. And being a big YouTuber like he is, they were more than happy to oblige, regardless of the facts. But what gives him that right to shut down other channels? How is it that some YouTubers, the big ones, are above the rules and get away with so much crap. Now, I don't really follow the various YouTube dramas that go on, but it seems like the really huge channels with millions of subscribers are able to get away with controversies that would be an instant termination for normal channels. In that sense, YouTube is like a microcosm of the real world, where people who have money are able to get away with crimes that a person of average wealth couldn't. A while back, I was looking at Oxhorn's Twitter, and I found something interesting. As you can see, this pretentious douchebag thinks he is above the rules that everyone else is expected to abide by. He demands the red carpet to be rolled out for him, and he demands that people bow down before him like he is some sort of king or something. One can only imagine he communicated in a similar fashion with someone at YouTube, demanding, behind the scenes, he demanded them to have my account terminated. The sad thing is that they obliged. Kind of makes you wonder what else he's done behind the scenes that no one even knows about. Oxhorn is a coward. At least Benny has the decency to look his victim in the face as he's shooting him dead.
Maybe cons kill people without looking them in the face. But I ain't a fink. Dig?
But not Asshorn. Asshorn is a fink, whatever that means. I've seen comments by people saying what a nice guy Oxhorn is. Let me tell you, that's all an act. Oxhorn is a marketer. It is his job to be nice. He is trying to sell you garbage. Remember the Vault Tech guy in Fallout 4?
Good morning. Vault-Tec calling.
He was a nice guy too, because he's trying to sell you something. When a marketer is not trying to sell you something, then they're not so nice. Then, and only then, do you see their true colors. Remember Vince, the ShamWow guy? He seemed nice, didn't he? Well, turns out he beat up a prostitute. Wasn't so nice after all. But hey, at least he can try to sell her one of those ShamWow towels to soak up her blood, right? And remember Jared, the Subway guy, who marketed Subway? Jared, the Subway guy, was a hero. Well, turns out he was a pedophile. So, wasn't so nice after all, was he? And that's the thing you have to keep in mind about these toxic marketers. They act nice, but it's all an act. And deep down, many of them are hiding some really dark secrets that they don't want you to know about. If you were dying of thirst in the desert, these toxic scumbag marketers would sell you a glass of water. That's the only help you would receive from them. Everything comes at a price. The word charity is not in their vocabulary. This, despite the fact that many of these marketer shills claim to be God-fearing Christians, but they do not live by Christ's example. When have you ever seen Oxhorn do a charity drive on his channel? Never. Even though he is a colossal channel, the only thing that is larger than Oxhorn's channel is his ego. And maybe his clothing size. I, on the other hand, am very proud to say that I am not a marketer. The word marketer is, or at least it should be, a pejorative. I am a man of principle and integrity. I could never do what it takes to be a marketer, which involves lying and feigning a love of something which I know to be shit. Asshorn calls people like me, who tell it like it is, toxic.
These are toxic people, and they just love pointing out flaws, and they don't provide any positive criticism. They don't point out the positives. They're just negative people, constantly toxic. Those kind of people exist, and you'll never cure those people. You can't do anything to convince those people. You must simply do what you can to block them out of your lives.
Now, I don't focus on the negative just for the sake of it being negative. I focus on the negative because that is what needs to be addressed. I'm not trying to sell someone a shitty product like this toxic shill does. In addition to that, the other reason I could never be a marketer is because I do not possess the superficial charm of a sociopath. Ladies and gentlemen, I am fully aware that I possess as much charm as a sack of potatoes. I don't have that sexy, deep, manly voice that Oxhorn does, which makes everyone go weak at the knees. As someone once put it, I have a, quote, deceased voice, which is actually very
apt,
considering that I really am deceased, because my channel was murdered by a coward. But even though I am deceased, I'm still here rattling my chains over the injustice that was done to me and to the Fallout community by this toxic shill who has invaded our beloved franchise. And because of him, we now have Fallout 76. Oxhorn's toxic shilling for Fallout 4 shored the game up against all criticism, and because of that, Bugthesda thought it was perfectly fine to double down on the bullshit in Fallout 76. Oxhorn wasn't the only one, but I would say he was one of the worst, if not the worst offender in that regard. Camel Toe Works, Mr. Matty Plays, and some of the others also bear some responsibility for the toxic shilling which led Bethesda to believe that they could get away with Fallout 76. But I tried to do what I could to stop this from happening. But Toxic Horn thwarted my efforts by having my account banned. And with the banning of my account, all of the comments people had left on my videos are now gone as well. So you see, I wasn't the only one who was censored by Oxhorn. Ironically, Oxhorn supporters who flooded my channel with hateful comments were also silenced as well when the channel was terminated. I never silenced anyone. And that goes for the comment someone left saying I had a deceased voice. That's why I don't have a screenshot of it. If I had known my account would be terminated, then I would have taken a screenshot. It proves the point I'm trying to make about marketers and sociopaths and their superficial charm. Now I am very proud of not being a marketer or a sociopath. So anyone who insults me and says I sound like shit, or I sound deceased, or I talk slow, or whatever, that's something I take as a compliment. I am the antithesis of a sociopath. I am the antithesis of a marketer. That being said, I don't see anything appealing about Oxhorn's voice. To me, he sounds like Gwildor from the Masters of the Universe movie. very high-pitched. You wouldn't expect a so-called man that is 40 years old to sound like that. But whatever. If the sound of this comically high-pitched voice makes you moist, then so be it. I'm not here to focus on how someone's voice sounds. It's the message which the voice conveys that matters. If you want to be gay for Oxhorn, just keep in mind that Oxhorn hates gays. Now that's a subject for later, or perhaps a different video entirely, but yes, Oxhorn hates gay people. Which is ironic, because Fallout was created by a man who is gay. There are also certain characters in the franchise who are gay. According to Oxhorn, these people are bad and immoral. Oxhorn says he is not a bigot. What do you think? Is Oxhorn right when he says he is not a bigot? Now, I may elaborate on this further later on in the video, or perhaps in a separate video entirely. But I just want to say that for me personally, even though I am not gay, I am a big fan of Tim Kaine and the franchise that he created. Most of the so-called Fallout fan base nowadays thinks that the Fallout franchise was created by Todd Howard. You know who Todd Howard is. He's that rugged alpha Chad with a sexy, deep, manly voice. And as we all know, Todd Howard is 6'2" with hulking muscles and so on and so forth. Now you ask an average Oxhorn subscriber who created Fallout, and that is who they will say invented it. But the truth is that Tim Kaine was the creator of Fallout. So what I want to say is that I appreciate the work that Tim Kaine did in making the original Fallout. And if there was any justice in the world, then he would be the one who owns the franchise. As a matter of fact, he tried to buy it from Interplay when he was at Troika, but he was outbid by this guy who happened to have much deeper pockets. But that's a story for another time, perhaps. But my point is Tim Kaine is one of the greatest RPG developers of all time. And it's a damn shame that so few even know his name or even give him the credit that he deserves. They credit someone else for what he did. And what we know about Oxhorn is that he hates gay people. Oxhorn said that being gay is wrong and immoral. Now that could be part of the reason why Oxhorn hates the original Fallout so much. Oxhorn hates gays, and the original Fallout was a game that was made by a gay man. Now, Tim Kaine is currently at Obsidian, along with Leonard Boyarsky, as well as many other Fallout alumni. So, anyone who ever says that all the original Fallout people left Obsidian are full of shit. Those people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Now, I don't hate Mr. Matty Plays, but I have to say it is largely his fault that this myth about all the Fallout people leaving Obsidian is so prevalent today. It all comes from some sugar bomb interview with Chris Avallone where Chris trash-talked Obsidian.
So it seems like what Chris is saying here is that even though he could make a positive impact on the Fallout franchise and move it in a different direction, he's telling us that the studio seems to be in shambles at this point. There's too many problems with the managerial level. There's people departing left and right.
Now, I'm not going to get into the details of that, but the short version of what happened is that Matty was reporting fake news, and people still believe that to this day. You still see comments by people saying Obsidian is a dead studio and all the talent left and blah, blah, blah. It's flat out wrong. Like I said, I don't hate Matty. I think it was just an honest mistake on his part. But nevertheless, his channel seems to be where this myth originated. But anyway, I digress. Anyway, in addition to Tim Kaine being gay, there are also a number of openly gay characters in New Vegas. I think this might explain some of Oxhorn's hatred towards Obsidian and why he tried to slander them numerous times in multiple videos.
The third is that Obsidian simply got the lore wrong, which wouldn't be the first time. After all, remember, they placed Mr. Handy robots, which are made by General Atomics, in the Repcon facility, which is owned by Robco, not General Atomics.
There is definitely an anti-Obsidian bias in his videos. He even gloated on Twitter over how Microsoft had bought them out and how they are no longer an independent studio. Why this happened is because Pillars of Eternity 2 failed to meet sales expectations. Why didn't it sell very well? The game has a very good score on Metacritic. Those who played it seem to have thought it was good. So why didn't it sell? Well, when have you ever heard any of these so-called Fallout YouTubers talk about Pillars of Eternity? I don't just mean Oxhorn, but all of the big Fallout YouTubers. These guys claim to be Fallout fans, and yet they've kicked the studio that created the franchise in the first place to the curb. How can you claim to be a fan of something and yet show such disloyalty to the people who made it? And yet, these Fallout YouTubers, they certainly showed hype for Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, didn't they? And we see how those games turned out. The Metacritic score of these games is far, far less than Pillars of Eternity and its sequel. If these big YouTubers had given these games some mention, maybe the sales would have been better. They are the reason why Obsidian is now owned by Microsoft. The so-called Fallout channels showed no loyalty or devotion to the studio which made Fallout exist in the first place. They are traitors. Now, that being said, Obsidian no longer being an independent studio isn't necessarily the same as them being dead. There's still some hope. But when you look at what happened to studios like Rare after Microsoft bought them, or BioWare after EA bought them, and so on, then it doesn't look very good, does it? But only time will tell what will come of this, for good or ill. But let us remember that Obsidian was independent once, and these shill YouTubers gave them no love during that time. These shill YouTubers are partly to blame for this. Not entirely to blame, but they are partly to blame because they ignored these games and did not give them any attention whatsoever. So people did not even know that they existed. Instead, they hyped Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, games that should not have been hyped. Bethesda is a big enough company that they can hype their own games. They don't need help hyping their games. But Obsidian did. Obsidian didn't have the money to the marketing budget, you know? Anyway, by the way, right here is the link to that post he made back in 2006, revealing his opposition to homosexuality. If anyone wants to confirm this for themselves, here's the link. Go check it out. I can't guarantee that once this video is out and I expose him, that he won't go and try to delete this old forum of his and try to bury his controversial past. But I've taken these screenshots as proof of the things he has said that he doesn't want anyone to know about. There is also a site called archive.org which can reveal websites that have been deleted. So, as I've said in my previous video, he cannot ban the truth. Nor can he bury it either. At least not from a dog such as myself. A dog will dig up and expose what you tried to bury in your backyard. Ladies and gentlemen, Oxhorn tried to bury me in a shallow grave, just like Benny did with Courier 6. But like Courier 6, I will not go quietly. I will do whatever I can to see that Asshorn is brought to justice for his crimes. Oxhorn's real name is B.M. Dennis. This name is very
apt
because he certainly does look like a BM, doesn't he? Is this the sort of spokesman Bethesda wants marketing their products? A BM in a fedora? A BM who is a homophobe? A BM who is a misogynist?
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is your neighborly friendly hood Oxhorn, and with this video I'm going to show you how to create a prison cell, a prison system for your settlements.
A BM who is perhaps also a racist? This guy is a whack job and a creep. Anyone with common sense can see that he is not right in the head. As a matter of fact, I know that I am not alone in thinking that Oxhorn is a creep. While searching for information on Oxhorn, I happened upon this comment someone posted on a forum back in July of 2017. Now keep in mind, I made my first video exposing Oxhorn back in January of 2018. This comment predates that by over half a year. This comment is from before I was even aware that Oxhorn existed. So I am certainly not alone in thinking this guy is a creep. McBobbish says that he watched a video where Oxhorn was disgusted by a woman because the woman was fat. Now I would love to know exactly which video this person is referring to, because I would gladly expose him for fat shaming this poor woman. I assume the video in question is probably somewhere within his pretentious fedora and neckbeard vlog series. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of these videos, and each is like 2 hours long. So while I have no doubt that what McBobbish says is true, I don't have the time or patience to watch through all these shitty, pretentious videos to try to find that needle in a haystack. I'd imagine these fedora and neckbeard videos are chock full of all sorts of gems that Oxhorn should be exposed for. But who has the time for that? Now, if anybody knows of any gems in these toxic fedora videos, feel free to let me know. And in the future, if I make another video, I will use them to expose him further. But as for what McBobbish says about Oxhorn being a libertarian, I know that's not true. Libertarians are socially liberal. Libertarians support gay marriage and the like. Oxhorn does not. So it's not possible that Oxhorn is a libertarian. In addition, Oxhorn condemns Mr. House and says that Mr. House is bad. Mr. House is the libertarian faction in New Vegas, because while House is a de jure autocrat, he does not interfere in how people live their lives or how they conduct their business, which makes House a de facto libertarian, much more so than the NCR and especially the Legion. House does not say that gay marriage is wrong or immoral. The same goes for prostitution, gambling, and so on and so forth, which all exist completely unrestricted on the Strip. Under house, the Strip has blossomed into a haven of libertarianism. Oxhorn, however, is a Bible-thumping social conservative, and he sees the Strip as a sinful and immoral place. So no, long story short, Oxhorn is absolutely not a libertarian in any sense. And libertarians are for freedom of speech, which Oxhorn clearly is not, considering how he bans criticism, bans people who swear, and calls people who disagree with him
toxic people.
McBobbish isn't the only one other than myself who has gotten creepy vibes from Oxhorn. As a matter of fact, there is an entire discussion on Reddit about people getting creeped out by him. Here are some of the comments people have said. This comment here is interesting in what it says about how Oxhorn, being so philosophical, and his obsession on forcing his morality on other people. These are among the traits of a sociopath. Look at these traits and consider what we know about Oxhorn. Most, if not all, of these sociopathic traits are applicable to him. The superficial charm, the ego, the fact he is an expert storyteller, how he presents himself as such a righteous hero with high morals and philosophy. Think about it. I agree 100% with this comment. Oxhorn is a condescending asshole, and he is smug and thinks he is better than everyone else. He is pretentious and full of himself. Here is another comment. Devil Dog Frog says, quote, "Can't stand his personality, voice, or the fact all his characters are chicks with no clothes on." This point about Oxhorn being a pervert who treats women like pieces of meat is something that needs to be addressed in more depth. I'm going to try to get to that later on in the video, but this is another reason to hate Oxhorn. Not only is he a homophobe, but he is also a misogynist. He does not view women as being equal to men. In his deleted Manly Festo, which you can only access now through archive.org because he tried to bury it, as well as in his Grow a Beard site, where he fraudulently sells snake oil beard growing pills that don't even work. He says, or at least very strongly implies, that people who have beards are superior to people that don't have beards. If you can't grow a beard, then you are less than human, according to Oxhorn. Fortunately, being the sociopathic marketer that he is, Oxhorn has got you covered. Just give him the low price of $29.99 and he will send you some beard growing pills, which don't even work. Now, why he isn't in prison for fraud is beyond me. But the point here is that Oxhorn thinks that having a beard makes someone superior to those who don't have a beard. This is a misogynistic mindset because almost all women are incapable of growing beards, with very few exceptions. So, according to Oxhorn, women are by default inferior to men. Now, I know it's a different religion, but this beards make one great mindset reminds me of the Taliban in Afghanistan. Before 9/11 happened, Afghanistan was run by men with beards. These were some really classy men, right? Women in Afghanistan did not have access to Oxhorn's miracle beard-growing pills, so these women did not have the same rights as the classy men. In fact, the women of Afghanistan had to wear a bedsheet to hide their shame of not being a classy man like Toxic Horn here. That being said, even if these women did manage to grow a beard, they would still be considered less than human by Oxhorn if they had the misfortune of being fat. So in order to be a classy man, according to Oxhorn, you must have a beard. But you must also not be fat, because being fat is immoral and bad, at least if you're a woman. The way he talks really rubs me the wrong way, says DC2. Phantom Raymond says, what's up with that cringy voice he reads with? It's like an actual fedora was possessed with all the milady, neckbeard, bowling shirt, internet cliches out there and is reading his lines. I know exactly what you guys mean. Keep in mind, the majority of Oxhorn's subscribers are small children, but the way he talks is like some creepy pedophile who is rubbing one out and trying to seduce those small children to get into his van so he can take them for a ride.
I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride.
He reminds me a lot of that Jared the Subway guy. Oxhorn tries to portray himself as some family-friendly Mr. Rogers channel that is suitable for small children to watch. That's why he goes out of his way to ban people who swear from his Discord. Swearing is immoral, right? But clearly, he does not think it is immoral to smoke cigars and drink hard liquor in front of small children. These small children who are watching this guy, whom they may idolize, are going to think it is cool to smoke and drink hard alcohol. Is that moral? Seriously, Oxhorn's bigoted and misogynistic views on women and gays and women who happen to be fat and people who don't have beards is going to have an influence on these young children. So while he might seem to be family friendly on the surface, is that really the case? Look a little bit deeper at who he is and what he believes and ask yourself if you would want your kids to be watching this clown. Do you want your kids to grow up to be 400-pound, basement-dwelling neckbeards living in your basement at the age of 40? Because that is where they will end up if they get brainwashed by Oxhorn and the mentally ill ramblings in his delusional manly festo. Now, I kind of think even Oxhorn himself realizes how insane his manly festo would seem to normal people who are not insane, which is probably why he recently tried to bury it by deleting it, hoping that people wouldn't find out what a crackpot wacko he is. His manly festo was on a site called bloggingwithclass.com. If you try to enter that URL now, it redirects you to his YouTube channel. You have to use archive.org to access a backup of his site from before he tried to hide it. And believe me, there are some real gems in there. I encourage everyone to dig into his delusional ramblings and see for yourself what a lunatic he is. A few examples of the things he says in his manly festo are declaring that he wants to be filthy rich, his condemnation of gays, his views on women. He slams atheists, and he slams anyone who believes in any religion other than Christianity. But anyway, more on that later, perhaps. For now, let's go back to the comments about him being a creep. Unworthy Midget 293 says, "What gets me is how much of a rapey, pedophile vibe he gives off. That and his ignorant, biased hatred of the BOS. Yes, like I said, the majority of his audience is children. He should not be talking like he's trying to seduce his audience. That is sick. Now, I stopped watching his videos a long time ago, so I don't know of any particularly creepy examples of the way he talks, but let's just go with this one for now."
In our last episode, we finally discovered the name of the man who shot us in the head. Benny.
Now, I'll try to imitate the way he talks here and try to emphasize what is wrong with it. But I don't know if I can pull off that classy, manly, high-pitched Gwildor voice of his. But I'll do my best. But first, in order to make myself as classy and manly as possible, I must don a fedora. But I must make sure the fedora isn't made out of mixed fabrics, because that would be immoral. And I also need a cigar. Now that I have both a fedora and a cigar, my body is ready.
In our last episode, we found the name of the man who shot us in the head. Oh yes, his name, it was Benny. In our last episode, we found the name of the man who shot us in the head. Benny. In our last episode, we finally found the name of the man who shot us in the head. His name was Benny. Hi everybody, I'm Oxhorn. I can't focus on politics right now. I have to focus on Benny.
So, which of these takes do you think best captured the spirit of Oxhorn? Which of these takes would you say was the most
apt?
Did I pull it off? Am I now a classy man? Or was my voice too deceased due to a successful puberty? I'll leave that for you to decide. But anyway, Rubixium writes, "It's the same feeling you get talking to the white gloves for the first time." Yes, exactly like the white gloves. Oxhorn's smug, condescending pretentiousness would fit right in among the white glove society. The only problem I see is that Oxhorn can't wear full-sized gloves.
I have small hands. I have what's called cadet hands. When I buy gloves, I have to buy cadet-sized gloves because my hands are so small.
Hopefully, the White Glove Society offers white gloves in the cadet size, which would fit the burly, hulking hands of the big ox. You know what they say about a man who wears cadet gloves? It means he has cadet-sized hands. What? What did you think it means? Organism writes, "First, It's the image he's chosen for his brand. Big beard, cigar, the hats. Like the typical fedora wearer who heard that fedoras get mocked now, so he thought, hey, I'll just substitute with other types of cool hats, like that's the issue, and not the certain creepy behaviors and opinions usually exhibited by guys like that. In the few videos of his I watched, he played skimpy, perfect women and a guy character that looked suspiciously like an idealized version of Oxhorn. What a surprise. As for his voice, he talks so slowly and emphatically, and he's so needlessly wordy that it's a chore to listen to him. And I don't think I need to read the rest of that. I think you get the idea. But again, I am reminded of the Vault-Tec salesman in Fallout 4.
Good morning. Vault-Tec calling.
He wears a stupid, ridiculous hat, and this is what defines his character. This character is so badly written and unnuanced that when you run into him again much later in his ghoulified form, he is still wearing the exact same ridiculous hat.
Hi.
What? No, it can't. It's you. From Sanctuary Hills, right?
A full 200 years have passed, and this badly written, unnuanced NPC is still wearing the exact same clothing as he was wearing 200 years earlier. And this clothing is still in mint condition too, by the way. Is this material made out of adamantium or something? Think about it. This dude's flesh has rotten or burned away, but his fedora is still in mint condition 200 years later. Only in a Bugthesda game, folks. This is Bugthesda's unnuanced writing at work. They could not write a character with depth that players could identify by a unique personality quirk or whatever. It's the clothing the NPC wears which defines its character. Now, let us consider for a moment the mindset of the writer that designed this character. Emil Pagliarulo was the lead writer at Bethesda Game Studios, and he is responsible for the abysmal characters in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. But apparently not in 76, because 76 doesn't have bad NPCs, because Fallout 76 has no NPCs whatsoever.
But there is one big difference with this game. It's that each of those characters is a real person. Because yes, Fallout 76 is entirely online. Fallout 76 is entirely online.
But let's just watch this video that sheds a bit of light on the mind of Bugthesda's lead writer and maybe get a better idea of how these shallow characters came to be.
I can talk to an old lady or an old guy and have him be a character, and then I can kill him, and and really feel like I killed a person, and really feel like I killed a person.
I killed a person. I killed a person. I killed a person. I killed a person. I killed a person. I killed a person. I killed a person. I killed a person.
I really feel like I killed a person, and then I can pick up his head and put it on his shelf. And I look at it, and it's like, I was talking to that person 5 minutes ago, and now I'm not. It's like, so it's that type of thing. We've really crossed that line.
What's wrong with this dude?
The problem with what Emil says about how
I killed a person, and then I can, pick up his head and put it on his shelf.
Killed a person is that he is implying that his characters were ever anything more than mere props. They are nothing more than shallow as a mud puddle, cardboard cutouts for players to shoot and loot and nothing more. They are defined solely by the hats they wear. And the same is true with Oxhorn. Oxhorn isn't simply a man who wears a fedora. Oxhorn is the fedora. He is literally a fedora that came to life one day, probably on a rack inside of a Goodwill. And this fedora then leapt onto the head of the nearest neckbeard in sight. And this fedora has been controlling the actions of this neckbeard ever since. Remember the story of Frosty the Snowman and how he came to life one day when the magical hat was placed on his head? That's also how Oxhorn came to exist. He used to be a BM named BM Dennis. But then the magical fedora was placed on the pile of BM, and he came to life as Oxy the Neckbeard, and he has remained this way ever since.
It is only fedora. Why you have to be douchebag? In Soviet Russia, wearing retarded hat may make you man. This Soviet cat think that he is man because he wear silly retarded hat. And in Soviet Russia, that may be true, that the hat make you man. But this is America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. America is a republic founded on the principle that all men are created equal. There is even a clause explicitly prohibiting the granting and recognition of titles of nobility. Wearing some dumbass hat that you've picked up at Goodwill does not make you better than anybody else, despite what you think. It just makes you look like a pretentious douchebag. At that point, you may as well don a cape and a monocle and go around acting like the fucking Monopoly guy.
Who is this ghastly man?
Ace Ventura, pet detective. And you must be the Monopoly guy. Hey, thanks for the free parking.
You may have cringed at my attempt at a Russian accent, but you have to keep in mind that I am a dog. So the truly amazing thing is that I'm even able to speak at all. Everything I know about Russian accents I learned from mid-90s computer games.
Nadia, this tea is truly excellent.
Thank you. I prepared it myself.
I learned from the best. Now, it is time to expose Oxhorn for his misogyny.
He's packing and whacking and smacking. He's packing and whacking and smacking. He's packing and whacking and smacking. He just whack, whack, chopping at me.
To better understand Oxhorn's misogynistic mindset, we must turn to the Bible, specifically Timothy, aka Saint Timothy. Oxhorn is obviously well aware of the writings of Timothy because he quotes a passage by Timothy in his manly festo, and he distorts the meaning of it in order to attempt to justify his avarice. The sin of avarice, which Timothy explicitly condemns, by the way, as does Jesus himself, which Oxhorn ignores and carries on with his toxic greed, despite the fact that Christianity and Christ himself explicitly condemn greed. But more on that later. In regards to women, Timothy has this to say, quote, "Let the woman learn in silence with all subjection. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. For Adam was first formed, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman, being deceived, was in the transgression." These are the words that Timothy says, and this is what Oxhorn believes. And that is why he treats women like objects, because he considers them subhuman and inferior to men. Oxhorn demands perfection in his female settlers. Oxhorn demands that they not be fat like he is, and he demands that they have enhanced bodies and wear skimpy attire. Oxhorn demands perfection out of his digital harem.
Her face is horrible, because some of these faces are pretty bad. Let's see if I can find an example. Yeah, here's an example of a face that's sort of just a little dowdy. And so what you can do is you select the settler, go disable, enable, then move to player, and that completely re-rolls the settler. That's the same one, right? See, I'm going to select her, and it deselected. It's the exact same settler. But it re-rolled the character according to your level list. So you not only got a new outfit, but you got a new face as well. So if you want to change the face, disable, then re-enable, and move it to you.
And this demanding of perfection in female bodies comes from the very same fat slob who called people toxic.
These are toxic people, and they just love pointing out flaws, and they don't provide any positive criticism. They don't point out the positives. They're just negative people, constantly toxic. Those kind of people exist, and you'll never cure those people. You can't do anything to convince those people. You must simply do what you can to block them out of your lives. These are toxic people, and they just love pointing out flaws, Her face is horrible, because some of these faces are pretty bad. Let's see if I can find an example. Yeah, here's an example of a face that's sort of just a little dowdy. Her face is horrible, because some of these faces are pretty bad. Let's see if I can find an example. Yeah, here's an example of a face that's sort of just a little dowdy.
Toxic for wanting Fallout 4 to be perfect. This was a straw man argument Toxic Horn harped on heavily in his shilling for Fallout 4 video, where he tried to portray all the criticism of the game as being people demanding the game be perfect.
What I'm saying is that it doesn't have to be a perfect game.
When in fact, people just wanted it to be an RPG, and they could have accepted the imperfections. But anyway, he blasted people for what he claimed was demanding perfection.
Arguments here. On one side of the coin, you're saying, well, I paid my hard-earned money for this game, and so I expect it to be perfect. Well, okay.
And yet he demands perfection in how his settlers look.
Her face is horrible, because some of these faces are pretty bad. Let's see if I can find an example. Yeah, here's an example of a face that's sort of just a little dowdy.
And let's face it, every single settler in his settlements is female. So there's no point in making a distinction between male and female settlers because they are all female. Oxhorn believes the only value a woman has is in the way she looks.
Her face is horrible, because some of these faces are pretty bad. Let's see if I can find an example. Yeah, here's an example of a face that's sort of just a little dowdy.
A woman's appearance defines her worth according to Oxhorn. And these are the values which Oxhorn is teaching to his largely underage audience. Oxhorn will re-roll his settlers until they meet his demand for perfection. Women with what he calls a dowdy appearance are not welcome in his settlements, and he does
what you can to block them out of your lives.
Oxhorn does what he can to delete these dowdy women from his life.
And so what you can do is you select the settler, go disable.
Because they are toxic for not being up to the beauty standards which he demands.
But part of it is our fault as gamers. We tend to have too high expectations for other people. We don't set the bar high enough for ourselves, and instead we set that bar too high for others. And we as human beings suffer from this same problem in other aspects of our lives. We oftentimes expect too much of our wives and husbands and children and parents, but don't put the bar high enough for ourselves. Tolstoy once said that everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change himself. And if you expect a perfect game, you have an unrealistic expectation. It's not the game that needs to adjust to your sense of perfection. It's your expectation that's the problem. And yet we feel like we can be critics. And that's not really fair to the people who are actually making things. And that's not really fair to the people who are actually making things.
And that's not really fair to the people who are actually making things.
I think that's unfair to Bethesda.
I think that's unfair to Bethesda.
And that's my argument against the Brother of Steel. They seek purity, racial purity. They hate
racial purity.
It was a great use of $60. You know what? God bless you. That's all.
And this is the sort of wholesome Christian values which Oxhorn is indoctrinating into the minds of his underage audience. And he is making tutorials showing these underage viewers how to remove these toxic, dowdy women from their lives. And it isn't just a dowdy face which is unwelcome in Oxhorn land. He also demands his settlers have large, perfect breasts and ass. He goes out of his way to install mods which enhance his digital harem. What Oxhorn is doing with these not safe for work nudity mods is essentially pornography, which is ironic because Oxhorn explicitly condemns pornography in his now deleted Manlyfesto. So I think it is very
apt
to call Oxhorn Oxporn instead of Oxhorn, because the reality is he is a porn addict. Now, I personally don't care if anyone views porn or masturbates or whatever. I don't care if you do or you don't. I'm not a religious conservative who will tell people what is wrong or immoral. But Oxhorn is. So the fact that Oxhorn jerks off to pornographic mods isn't an issue to me in and of itself. I don't care. But what I can't stand is people being hypocrites. Oxhorn has written an entire thesis on how pornography is bad, immoral, unclassy, unmanly, etc. As a matter of fact, he's actually written at least 2 theses condemning pornography and so on. Like I said, I don't care if people view pornography, but what I really can't stand is this hypocrisy and his smug, pretentious attitude, how he thinks he is better than everyone else, when in fact he does the very same thing that he condemns in others.
Next up is the Brotherhood of Steel pilot uniform for women.
Only for women. Why, pray tell, is it only for women? I wonder.
By Newer Mind 43. This is a standalone costume for both vanilla bodies and CBBE bodies. The mod author didn't like the way female characters and NPCs looked in the game wearing the Brotherhood of Steel jumpsuit, so he...
Yeah, who do these women think they are, wearing normal attire just like the men? These women have some nerve.
He created one of his own, based on concept art by Mitchell Morehauser. It's a great little costume. It's not skimpy. It's...
Not skimpy, huh?
Still looks good. And it has proved to be very popular.
Oh, I'm sure it has. I'm sure it has.
And last but not least, we've got the Pampas set by Ralphatas. This is a new bodysuit mod that is already extremely popular on the Nexus. Now,
extremely popular on the Nexus, huh? Why, I can't imagine why that would be.
Now, I do have to say that the mod comes with a few skimpy versions.
You mean this isn't the skimpy version?
Which I'm not going to be showing off here.
Of course not. You're not going to show that off here. Just like how Pee Wee Herman, a.k.a. Paul Rubens, didn't want to show off his skimpy collection of pornography either. You also don't want to reveal what a blatant hypocrite you are for the thesis you wrote in your manifesto about how pornography is bad and immoral and unmanly and so forth. That's why you won't show the skimpy versions of these mods, even though you are obviously aware that they exist and you probably have them installed. The skimpy versions are for your own personal private time, right? Wink. You've spent over 3,000 hours playing Fallout 4. 3,266 hours divided by 24 is 136 days. That's almost half a year of your life that you've spent playing this shitty game. And I don't mean half a year in terms of days where much of the time was spent eating, sleeping, smoking cigars, etc. I mean that's half a year of your life spent solely on this garbage game. And now that Fallout 76 is out, that might be another half a year of your life or more.
I don't know about you, but I don't have fun spending 90% of my time griping about a game that could be better.
No, we know exactly how you spend your time having fun.
I've been really trying, baby.
And Vault Boy also knows what you are doing in those thousands of hours when you're playing Fallout 4 off camera with those skimpy mods that you don't show. Vault Boy knows what you're up to in the basement when your wife is out of the house working a real job. Vault Boy knows what you do behind the scenes. And one of these days, perhaps, while you are doing one of your scotch and cigars videos, you're going to slip up and forget that you left the camera on. And this is what is going to happen.
What is up, everyone? Hello, hello, and welcome. Oh, the camera's on. The camera's been on the whole time, huh? I don't even know. Hello.
That's going to be you one of these days, Oxhorn. How are you going to explain yourself to your underage subscribers? Well, thankfully, you are the expert storyteller and lore master, after all. I'm sure you'll think of something.
Just like the bomber jacket that comes in the game, and it has gloves, belts, boots.
Feels like I'm wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
This mod does require the CBBE body, however, so you'll need to make sure that you have that mod installed before you use this one.
The CBBE mod Oxhorn is referring to is the Caliente Beautiful Bodies Enhancer mod. Do you recall the screenshot of the comment by McBobbish saying how he saw a video where Oxhorn reacted with disgust at the sight of a woman who was fat? While I don't know which video he was referring to specifically, and thus I cannot provide proof to back that up, I see no reason whatsoever to doubt what McBobbish said is true. Ladies and gentlemen, Oxhorn is installing enhancer mods for the female characters in his games. Never mind the fact that Oxhorn himself is a 400-pound slob. Isn't it funny how a fat man who looks like this has the gall to be disgusted by women for their default appearance? And he installs mods such as this to make their breasts bigger. Oxhorn did an entire video on the CBBE mod. This mod, as you can see, is not safe for work. It is hilarious that Oxhorn says he works for a living when all he does is sit on his fat ass all day dressing up digital dolls. But he calls that working for a living. But as you can see, this mod is not safe for work. These censor bars you see in the image, I put there myself. The pictures actually show full frontal nudity of women, and only women. The mod, of course, only works for females, which is completely fine for Oxhorn because his settlements are 100% female anyway. But yeah, I put the censor bars over the nude bits. Not that this video is kosher anyway, but you know.
Next is the Pompous Set by Raffletas. I've been showing this one off in all of my big faction mod roundups because it's one of the best bodysuit armors for females in the game.
One of the best, you say? So it offers better protection even than power armor?
This one is another handsome one, and it's what I use on my player character. It's a great all-over bodysuit complete with a logo belt. It has an optional jacket. I don't personally wear the jacket, but the
yeah, a jacket would kind of make it hard to see those enhanced breasts and ass.
It also comes with a logo on the back. It comes with boots that you can alter to make them fur-lined or to put the Minuteman colors on them. It's a great Minuteman-themed armor mod for those of you who need Under Armour for more bulky armor.
That suit's a little revealing, isn't it?
Well, it allows for maximum mobility. Feels like I'm wearing nothing at all.
Quit it! Pack. And what this mod does is it creates a leveled list that makes your settlers spawn wearing some of these new clothing packs. Traditionally in the game, if you wanted any of your settlers to wear the new clothing that you've downloaded, you would have to go and manually start a trade with them and exchange the clothing. Now that, of course, is a tedious and time-consuming process, so altering the leveled list for your settlers will make sure that they spawn for the first time in your settlement wearing the appropriate clothes.
Appropriate isn't the word I would use to describe it.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is your neighborly friendly hood Oxhorn.
Friendly neighborhood Oxhorn? You mean like Mr. Rogers? Won't you be my neighbor? It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood? Hey, wait a minute. Why do you have all these women bound up like this? That doesn't seem very friendly or neighborly.
And with this video, I'm going to show you how to create a prison cell, a prison system for your settlements.
These prisoners are guilty of the crime of not having a beard. Anyway, in the interest of finishing this video sometime this century, I'm not going to cover the full video Oxhorn made about his misogynistic rape prison. If you want to watch it, go check it out on his channel, and, if possible, spread the word about it to help expose this creep. But make sure you do it before he deletes it, like he did with his manly festo. I'm sure you get the point that there is something extremely fucked up in this wacko's head. There are many comments on the video which show that even his biggest fans feel uncomfortable about this. This comment here seems to sum it up best. You've got some deep, hidden issues. I agree 100%. He certainly does. He reminds me a lot of BTK. BTK was a serial killer who bound, tortured, and killed women. It seems like Oxhorn has these same sort of sick fantasies. Oxhorn definitely meets the criteria of a sociopath, so I would not put anything past him. And again, Oxhorn tries to portray himself as a family-friendly Mr. Rogers channel. But I don't remember Mr. Rogers altering the female puppets in the land of make-believe to have huge breasts and ass. And why is every single character in Oxhorn settlements female? This guy obviously has some mental issues. Having a manifesto is a sign of mental illness. But he deleted that. So maybe, on some level, he understands what a wacko he appears to be. But the mental illness still manifests itself in his videos where he builds prisons full of nothing but female prisoners and settlements with nothing but female settlers. Where are all the men?
I'll get some hot dogs.
No footlongs.
I know. They make you uncomfortable.
Diogenes was known to walk around in broad daylight holding a lamp. When he was asked what he was doing, Diogenes replied, "I am looking for a man." If Diogenes were alive today, And if he were to shine the light of his lamp in Oxhorn's basement, he certainly would not find a man. What would Diogenes say about the pretentious neckbeards and the self-proclaimed classy men of today? What would Diogenes think of Oxhorn's manly festo and his thesis on what it means to be a classy man? If you have to write a massive thesis to try to explain how you are a man, then you probably aren't very manly, are you?
Does he look like a bitch?
Yes, sir. And he sounds like one, too. The fact is, Oxhorn feels threatened and insecure by real men.
I'll get some hot dogs.
No footlongs.
I know. They make you uncomfortable.
That's why his Fallout 4 settlements and rape dungeons are full of women only. This guy has some serious mental issues. And even his own fans have noticed something isn't quite right about this guy. Even small children who should not be exposed to this shit are feeling uncomfortable with what they are seeing in Oxhorn's videos. These children are too small to understand, but I think they know that women should not be treated like this. And again, where are all the men in these settlements? It reminds me of a mission in Mass Effect 2 called The Gift of Greatness.
It's like they're cattle or toys. In a year, all the male crew members are flagged as exiled or dead. They separated out the women, assigned them to officers like pets. And after the beacon is fixed, the officers appear in the casualties too. After. My father took control and didn't stop it.
Ronald Taylor is basically a black version of Oxhorn. Ronald Taylor treats women like his own personal harem, just like Oxhorn does with his Fallout 4 settlements.
That's it? You created a harem and played king? 10 years in a juvenile fantasy? That's it? You created a harem and played king? 10 years in a juvenile fantasy?
In his manifesto, Oxhorn says that naivety is a virtue. He misspells the word. I don't know if this was a deliberate misspelling to accentuate his point, or if Oxhorn just doesn't have a clue.
Which wouldn't be the first time. After all, remember, in Fallout 2 we meet the inventor of Jet, a young boy genius named Myrnon. What makes this even more frustrating is we know the lengths that Myrnon went to...
Naive is just a more politically correct way of saying gullible. Let us not forget that Oxhorn is a marketer. It is his job to prey upon the gullibility of others. P.T. Barnum is alleged to have once said that there is a sucker born every minute. While this quote is attributed to Barnum, it actually comes from a banker. Speaking of bankers, check out the Wikipedia article on the CEO and chairman of ZeniMax, Robert A. Altman. Before this toxic crook became the CEO and chairman of ZeniMax, he was a banker. And due to his crooked and corrupt nature, he was permanently banned for life from the profession of banking. After being banned for life from banking, he went on to co-found ZeniMax, which is the parent company of Bugthestard, and he has been in charge of it ever since. This is the reason Bugthestard is the crooked and corrupt company that it is, because this is who is behind the steering wheel, a crook and a sociopath. And Oxhorn is the same way. On March 19th, 2018, Oxhorn filed a trademark application. This was on the exact same day which Oxhorn had my YouTube account terminated for alleged bullying. Now, is it a mere coincidence that my YouTube account happened to be terminated on the exact same day that Oxhorn filed this trademark application? Or was it because Oxhorn was trying to silence me? This trademark application is irrefutable proof that Oxhorn is a greedy scumbag. And when he says,
"You must simply do what you can to block them out of your lives,"
what he means is those who stand in the way of his toxic greed. Ladies and gentlemen, I know Oxhorn had my account terminated by YouTube. He took the cowardly approach, and he used his influence as a large channel to do what he could.
"You must simply do what you can to block them out of your lives."
To block me out of his life. But, like a bad penny, I keep turning up.
You've managed to kill just about everyone else, but like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target.
Oxhorn surely will get what he deserves in the end, just like Robert A. Altman will.
May there be a hell for you, a Tartarus, bleak, unending.
Even if it is not in this life, because, as Jesus said, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Oxhorn's trademark application claims this is a drawing of himself, but we all know that the real Oxhorn doesn't look like this. He actually looks like this.
Soy consumption, soy face. Soy consumption, soy face. Soy consumption, soy face.
Khan, I'm laughing at the superior intellect.
I am laughing at the superior class. But this is the image Oxhorn uses to market to his naifs, as he calls them. It is no coincidence that most of Oxhorn's audience are small children. Bugthestard also targets this demographic with their games. Children are the easiest to manipulate and market to because of their naivety. Oxhorn praises naivety as a virtue because the naive are the easiest to swindle and to deceive. Being naive naifs, Oxhorn's audience does not see his true colors. They do not see that he is taking them for a ride.
I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride.
Trying to sell them garbage. Instead of seeing Oxhorn as a sociopath and a marketer, they see him as this friendly, jolly Santa Claus sort of figure. But the reality is that Santa is all about giving presents to other people. Oxhorn is an anti-Santa who is all about himself, and he expects all the presents to be given to him. You want to talk to Oxhorn on Discord? You gotta pay for that.
Wait, son, you have to pay for that toothbrush. Son? Son? Hey!
Unless you give him money, he will not give you the time of day. In his older videos, he used to say he read every comment and used those as inspiration in his future videos. But now you have to pay him to talk to you, because he is so full of himself and he thinks he is superior to everyone else. And those who criticize him are viewed as a disease that has to be eradicated.
Kevin, you're such a disease.
Shut up.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I do not believe nor accept much of what the Bible says is true. But there are some things in it that I like, such as John 1:5, which reads, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot comprehend it." I like that. And apparently so did the creators of New Vegas. These words are etched in Greek on Joshua Graham's unique pistol of the same name. Joshua Graham says,
"In a world filled with misery and uncertainty, it is a great comfort to know that, in the end, there is light in the darkness."
The Joshua Graham character was written by Josh Sawyer. Josh Sawyer was the project director behind New Vegas, as well as Pillars of Eternity, and so on. As with Tim Kaine, Josh Sawyer is an extremely underrated developer, and as with Tim Kaine, he is still at Obsidian, once again proving that the haters who lie and say that the studio is dead are full of shit and don't know what they're talking about. Many people were involved in the creation of New Vegas, but no single person had more to do with the game's greatness than Josh Sawyer. This man is a genius, and the darkness cannot comprehend that genius. New Vegas is the light shining in the darkness, and the darkness cannot comprehend it. I should do an entire video dedicated to the greatness of the legendary Josh Sawyer, but sadly, I will probably never get that chance because the cowardly Oxhorn has decreed that I must be eradicated from YouTube and silenced. But back to my original point. I respect Jesus, and I agree with much of what he said, such as his condemnation of toxic greed and shilling. I choose what I agree with in the Bible, and I don't agree with everything. It turns out Oxhorn is the same way. But what Oxhorn picks and chooses to agree with are polar opposite of the things which I pick and choose to agree with. Oxhorn rejects the words of Jesus when Jesus said that greed is bad. He also rejects the words of Timothy when Timothy said that money is the root of all evil. We can see by the enormous amount of money Oxhorn makes by shilling for shitty Bugthestard games that Oxhorn has rejected these core tenets of Christianity. The Godfather Part 3 was a disappointing movie in comparison to the first two Godfather films, but there was a scene in the film which I feel is very
apt.
And that scene is when the priest talks about the stone in the water and how so-called Christians are the same as these stones, because even though the stone is surrounded by water, the water does not reach the interior of the stone.
Look at this stone. It has been lying in the water for a very long time, but the water has not penetrated it. Look, perfectly dry. The same thing has happened to men in Europe. For centuries, they have been surrounded by Christianity. But Christ has not penetrated. Christ doesn't live within them.
Christ does not live within them, just as Christ does not live within Oxhorn, or with many other so-called Christians who are obsessed with making money. These Christian preachers make millions, if not tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. And they pay no taxes either, by the way. To those of you who are watching this video, Christians and otherwise, please explain how you can reconcile these preachers making hundreds of millions of dollars with what Jesus and Timothy said about money being the root of all evil, and that it is more likely for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. What does Creflo Dollar need with a $65 million luxury jet? This sociopath even has the word dollar in his name, which is very
apt.
His name is literally Dollar. You can't make this stuff up, folks. In addition to this toxic greed, which is explicitly condemned in the Bible, this toxic piece of garbage has been arrested for choking and punching his daughter. A real classy man, right?
What's wrong with this dude?
What is wrong with this dude is that he is a sociopath. The same goes for all the other multi-million-dollar preachers, no doubt. Mr. Almighty Dollar claims he did this because she became
disrespectful.
Probably something to do with the misogyny he learned from Timothy. So Creflo Dollar cherry picks passages such as this and embraces it. But other passages, such as this, by the very same author, he obviously ignores. There are people starving to death in poverty, and Mr. Dollar has this $65 million luxury jet. Now, I don't know about you, but I kind of get a feeling that this $65 million luxury jet isn't going to make its landing in the kingdom of heaven. Oxhorn may not have a $65 million luxury jet, but the amount of money he gets every day is obscene. This site here, which was last updated in July of 2018, estimates he gets $360 every single day just from ad revenue alone. Now keep in mind that's just an estimate. If you round that up, it's $400 a day just from the ad revenue alone. And that doesn't count Patreon donations, his crappy merchandise sales, his fraudulent snake oil beard growing pills, which don't even work, and whatever other schemes he's involved in that we don't even know about. So add it all up, and how much money does Oxhorn get every single day? Is it $500 a day? $600 a day? More? We can only speculate. But whatever the amount is, even if you go with the lowest possible estimate, this amount is far beyond the amount that most people who work for a living make. Where is the justice in people working hard for a living and struggling to make ends meet while this 400-pound slob does nothing but sit on his ass all day playing with digital dolls, and he makes all this money for doing nothing at all? Where is the justice in that? In order to fully understand the toxic mindset of this piece of garbage, you need to look at his now deleted Manifesto, where he makes his avarice clear by explicitly stating, "I want to be filthy rich." Ladies and gentlemen, here we see Oxhorn's toxic, anti-Christian mindset laid bare. Oxhorn quotes a passage by Timothy about how one should provide for their family. Now, it is sensible and reasonable that someone should provide for their family if they can. This is common sense. I don't see anything inherently wrong with what Timothy says in this specific passage. But the problem is, Oxhorn distorts and perverts the meaning of the passage. Oxhorn uses this passage in bad faith. Remember, Timothy also says that the love of money is the root of all evil. Now, as we all know, Oxhorn is too much of a coward to defend himself, so if any of his fanatical supporters want to white knight for him and try to rationalize this blatant contradiction, go ahead and do so. Who are you that do not know your Christianity? Well, for one thing, that is for absolute certain that you are not, is a Christian. A nominal Christian, maybe, but the very foundation of the religion is built on the premise that money is the root of all evil, and explicitly says this in no uncertain terms. And it is not just Christ's disciples who say this. Christ himself condemned greed and said that it is easier for a camel to walk through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. And remember that the reason Christ was crucified in the first place is because of his protest against the charging of money in the temple. Jesus went in there with a whip like Indiana Jones, but without the pretentious fedora, and he knocked those tables the fuck over. That is the real Jesus. The real Jesus would be disgusted by what Oxhorn is and what he is doing. The real Jesus was actually very similar to Arcade Gannon. Like Jesus, Arcade Gannon cures the sick. He probably isn't being paid much for what he does, but according to some 400-pound neckbeard, Arcade Gannon is bad and immoral. This 400-pound slob thinks Arcade is bad because he's gay. This 400-pound slob doesn't cure the sick, nor feed the hungry. All he does is shove scotch and cigars into his own fat face. And yet he says that Arcade Gannon is immoral. Arcade Gannon saves lives. The world is a better place because of people like Arcade being in it. Oxhorn helps no one. There is not one thing that Oxhorn does that is good. Telling people they are bad and immoral for being gay is not doing good. That doesn't make you a Christian. Jesus cured the sick and fed the poor. A Christian is someone who lives by Christ's example. I don't know whether Arcade believes in Christ or not, but I know he is more of a Christian in principle than this fat, pretentious slob is. Jesus never at any time ever said that homosexuality was bad. This comes from Leviticus, which is in the Old Testament. If you put your faith in the Old Testament instead of in Jesus, then you are not a Christian. In fact, you are more like those who killed Jesus.
I want him dead because he cramps my business.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is entirely possible that Oxhorn was a human being once, but at some point he lost sight of what it means to be human.
Certainly is the cup of the King of Kings. Eternal life.
I've got a t-shirt shop, folks. If you would like an Oxhorn or a Fallout-inspired shirt, you can find a link to my shop in the description below. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Patreon subscribers gain access to a private channel on my
He chose poorly. And this is so true. Like Donovan, Oxhorn would choose the classiest cup because, like Donovan, Oxhorn does not comprehend the light shining in the darkness. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that Oxhorn will have this channel terminated just as he did with my previous channel. For future reference, this is the channel on which this video will be uploaded. I don't know how long it will be up, but I hope it will be up long enough for people to download it and spread the truth about this cowardly bully, misogynist, and homophobic bigot. YouTube is run by a woman. You would think that as a woman, she would be outraged by Oxhorn's misogyny.
Well, I think there is a problem just in the numbers and being underrepresented. Like, we need more women.
Oxhorn wants to have more women too. As a matter of fact, he would probably add you to his settlement.
Her face is horrible, because some of these faces are pretty bad. Let's see if I can find an example. Yeah, here's an example of a face that's sort of just a little dowdy. And so what you can do is you select the settler, go disable, enable,
if there was any justice, Oxhorn would be the one who has his channel terminated for his toxic bigotry towards women, gays, and minorities. Oxhorn tolerates literal neo-Nazis within his community. These are the sort of hateful bigots that support and defend Oxhorn. But Oxhorn does not ban them from his life. These people are tolerated on his channel, and presumably also on his Discord. But he does ban people who criticize him. And more than that, it would seem that he has YouTube in his back pocket, and he uses his influence as a massive channel to ban people not only from his channel, but also from YouTube entirely. Why does being a large channel give him the power to censor freedom of speech? Shouldn't all channels be equal? The only hope I have is in word of mouth. My problem is that I lack the superficial charm of a sociopath, so most people are probably too bored to listen to what I have to say. I never wanted to do this, but I had to because no one else would speak out against this tyrant. As I said in my other video, I tried to get other YouTubers, such as Rags, to go after Oxhorn, because these people are more charismatic and influential, and they could see that justice is done. But it turns out Rags really wasn't the hero I thought he was, after all. His channel petered out, it seems. Now he does videos reviewing game mice, and he has a Patreon, just like Oxhorn. He was an inspiration to me, but it turns out he is a sellout. I honestly thought he was better than that. Right now, it feels like I'm the only one who is going to expose Oxhorn for his bigotry. He is quietly deleting his old blogs and such, and trying to censor the truth that he is a bigot and a tyrant. That is why I made this video, so he cannot get away with trying to bury the truth. And though this video will surely be taken down, and my account will surely similarly be terminated, just like my last one, I will follow the example of Sean Connery and upload it to sites outside of YouTube's dictatorial control. And I encourage others to do so as well. If I were a Fallout character, my charisma would be a 1 at best. But I'm sure many of you have much better charisma, and you can more eloquently get the message across. So I encourage you to make videos of your own exposing Oxhorn and his bigotry, especially if you are a large YouTuber and have more pull than I do with my grand total of 0 subscribers. And this is the channel on which I am originally uploading this video. If this channel ends up terminated, like my previous one, that will confirm that Oxhorn is censoring free speech. Free speech is not bullying. It is an inalienable human right. Just as Oxhorn has the right to say homosexuality is immoral, or that women are just pieces of meat that should be treated like cattle, so too should we have the right to criticize what he is saying. The termination of my channel and attempt to silence me was more than just an attack on me. It was an attack on free speech as a whole. And when they come for you, who will there be left to speak for you? If, by some miracle, I do not get terminated, I would like to make a video comprehensively debunking the fake news in this video. Many a true nerd insults our intelligence by claiming that Fallout 3 is better than we think. This guy is a paid shill similar to Oxhorn, but at least many a true nerd isn't a bigot, at least as far as I know. I wonder what many a true nerd would say about Oxhorn's misogyny and homophobia. I presume he doesn't even know. Well, anyway, folks, I'd love to debunk that video with a 3-hour counter video of my own. Will I ever get the chance to make that video?